Sarah Bennett stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting her navy blue blazer one last time. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up her grandmother's old golden pendant, the one piece of jewelry that always gave her strength. At 32 years old, she had come a long way from the little girl who used to play with broken computer parts in her grandmother's basement in Atlanta. The morning sun peeked through the curtains of her modest apartment. Even after all her success, Sarah kept her living simple. Her mind drifted back to where it all began, just 5 years ago, in that very basement that smelled of old books and her grandmother's sweet potato pies. Back then, Sarah worked as a junior IT specialist at a local bank. Every day, she would wake up at 5 a.m., put in her 8 hours at the bank, then rush home to work on her dream. Her grandmother, Mrs. Rose Bennett, would bring her coffee and sandwiches, watching with proud eyes as her granddaughter typed away at her computer late into the night. "Child, you need to rest," her grandmother would say, placing a warm hand on her shoulder. "Just one more hour, Gran," Sarah would reply, her eyes fixed on the lines of code that would eventually. Sarah pulled her Tesla into the private aviation terminal's parking lot at exactly 8:30 a.m. The morning sun reflected off the sleek private jets lined up on the tarmac. She had made sure to arrive an hour early for her 9:30 a.m. flight to San Francisco. After checking her appearance one final time in the car mirror, she grabbed her leather briefcase and designer laptop bag, both gifts to herself after landing her first major contract. The terminal building stood impressive with its glass walls and modern architecture. Sarah had flown from here twice before for business meetings, but today felt different. The potential investors in San Francisco could help SecureFlow expand nationwide. Her hands touched her grandmother's pendant for luck as she walked toward the entrance. Inside, the terminal's marble floors gleamed under soft lighting. The air smelled of expensive coffee and leather seats. A group of businessmen in suits walked past her, nodding politely as they headed toward their gate. Sarah approached the security checkpoint, her heels clicking against the floor, her documentation ready in hand. That's when she met Richard Maxwell. The security guard stood behind his desk, his gray uniform pressed perfectly, his badge gleaming. He looked up as Sarah approached, and his expression changed so slightly that someone else might have missed it. But Sarah had seen that look before, the slight narrowing of eyes, the small downturn of lips. "Good morning," Sarah said professionally, placing her flight documentation on the counter. "I'm here for the 9:30 a.m. flight to San Francisco." Maxwell picked up her papers without responding to her greeting. He studied them longer than necessary, flipping back and forth between pages. Around them, other passengers continued to walk through with quick credential checks. "And you say this is your flight?" Maxwell finally spoke, his tone making the question sound more like an accusation. Sarah kept her voice steady. "Yes, it is. As you can see, all my documentation is in order." "Ma'am, this is the private aviation terminal," Maxwell said slowly, as if speaking to a child. "These flights are for executive clients only." A businessman who had arrived after Sarah was already being waved through by another guard. Sarah felt her heart rate increase, but her face remained calm. Years of being the only black woman in corporate meetings had taught her to control her expressions. "I'm aware of that," she replied. "I'm the CEO of SecureFlow Technologies. We have a contract with Elite Aviation Services." She pulled out her company ID and business cards. Maxwell barely glanced at them. "Anyone can print business cards," he said. "I'm going to need to verify this. Please step aside." Sarah stood her ground. "You didn't ask anyone else to step aside. My credentials are in order, just like theirs." More travelers were passing through now. Some slowed down to watch the scene unfold. Sarah noticed a few taking out their phones, but she couldn't tell if they were recording or just checking messages. "Ma'am, if you don't step aside, I'll have to call security," Maxwell warned. "You are security," Sarah replied evenly. "And I'm asking why you're treating me differently from other passengers." Maxwell reached for his radio. "I have a situation at the main checkpoint," he spoke into it. "Possible unauthorized access attempt." Sarah took out her phone and began recording. "I want to be clear about what's happening," she said calmly. "I have complete and correct documentation for my flight. I've flown from this terminal before. You're denying me access without cause." The terminal had grown quieter. Sarah could feel eyes on her, some sympathetic, others just curious. A young woman in a pilot's uniform had stopped to watch, her face showing concern. "Security is on their way," Maxwell announced, looking pleased with himself. "So is my lawyer," Sarah replied, sending a quick text while keeping her phone recording. She thought of her grandmother's words about standing tall, about earning her place at any table. 5 minutes passed like hours. Sarah could have gotten angry, could have raised her voice, but she knew better. Instead, she stood perfectly still, phone recording, documenting every moment of what was about to become a turning point, not just in her life, but in the lives of many others. Finally, she heard quick footsteps approaching from behind. "Oh my goodness, Ms. Bennett," a familiar voice called out. It was Lisa Chen, the terminal's supervisor, hurrying toward the checkpoint. "What's going on here?" The look on Maxwell's face changed from smug to uncertain as his supervisor approached. He was about to learn that some mistakes come with consequences bigger than he could imagine. Lisa Chen, the terminal supervisor, quickly assessed the situation. Her face showed a mix of embarrassment and concern as she looked between Sarah and Maxwell. Other passengers had formed a small crowd, their phones still recording the scene. The morning sunlight streaming through the terminal's glass walls seemed to spotlight the unfolding drama. "Miss Bennett has flown with us several times," Lisa said to Maxwell, her voice sharp with authority. "She's one of our regular executive clients." Maxwell's face reddened, but he didn't back down. "I was just following protocol," he mumbled, still holding Sarah's documents like they might bite him. "You can't be too careful these days." "What protocol?" Sarah asked calmly, her phone still recording. "The protocol that let every other passenger walk through with a simple credential check, or is there a special protocol just for me?" A tall businessman in the watching crowd spoke up. "I've been flying from this terminal for 3 years," he said. "They'd never asked me to step aside for extra verification. Not once." Lisa turned to Sarah, her professional mask cracking with genuine regret. "Miss Bennett, I cannot apologize enough. Please, let me escort you to the VIP lounge while we sort this out." But Sarah stayed where she was. Her grandmother had taught her that some moments weren't just about personal comfort. They were about standing up for what's right. "No, Lisa," she said firmly. "I want to understand exactly what happened here. Mr. Maxwell, could you explain which specific protocol led you to treat me differently?" Maxwell shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between Sarah, Lisa, and the growing crowd. I was just being thorough," he stammered. "Thorough?" Sarah's voice remained level, but carried throughout the now quiet terminal. "Let's be thorough then. In the past 10 minutes, 17 other passengers walked through this checkpoint. None were asked to step aside. None had their credentials questioned. None were threatened with security. What made me different?" The silence that followed was deafening. A young mother in the crowd was explaining quietly to her daughter why what they were watching was important. 2 pilots had stopped their pre-flight discussion to observe. Even the coffee shop barista had paused her work to watch. Lisa tried again. "Miss Bennett, I assure you Mr. Maxwell will be dealt with appropriately. Your flight?" "My flight can wait," Sarah interrupted, her voice firm but professional. "This isn't just about me catching a plane anymore. This is about every person who looks like me who might come through these doors. How many others has Mr. Maxwell turned away? How many didn't have the credentials I have to prove him wrong?" She turned to address the crowd directly, her grandmother's pendant catching the morning light. "I'm the CEO of a cybersecurity firm. I have an MBA. I've flown from here before. I still got treated like an intruder. Think about that." Maxwell had started to sweat, his collar tight around his neck. I wasn't trying to." "To what?" Sarah asked. "To profile me? To assume I didn't belong here because of how I look? Let's be honest about what happened." Lisa stepped forward again, this time with her phone out. "I've contacted regional management, Ms. Bennett. They want to speak with you directly. And Mr. Maxwell," she turned to the guard, "please turn in your badge and report to HR. Your services are no longer required here." The crowd began to murmur. Someone in the back started clapping, and others joined in, but Sarah felt no joy in Maxwell's firing. Instead, she felt a deeper purpose forming in her mind. This moment could be more than just an incident. It could be the beginning of real change. She finally turned to Lisa. "I'll speak with management, but not right now. I have investors waiting in San Francisco, and I never miss a meeting. She gathered her documents from Maxwell's desk. But I'll be back. And when I return, we're going to have a longer conversation about how to prevent this from happening to anyone else. As Sarah walked through the checkpoint, head held high, she could feel the weight of what had just happened. Her grandmother had always said that real change doesn't come from running away from difficult moments, but from walking straight through them with dignity. Her flight to San Francisco would take off in 30 minutes. But Sarah knew that this morning's real journey had already begun, one that would lead to changes bigger than anyone in that terminal could imagine. Sarah's flight to San Francisco was unusually quiet. While other passengers worked on laptops or chatted with each other, she sat still, her mind replaying the morning's events. Her phone had been buzzing nonstop since videos of the incident hit social media. By the time her plane landed at San Francisco International Airport, the clip had over 1 million views. But Sarah wasn't thinking about going viral. She was thinking about data. In her hotel room that evening, after successfully meeting with the investors, she opened her laptop. As a cybersecurity expert, Sarah knew that numbers told stories that people couldn't hide. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she began her research. If it happened to me, it happened to others, she whispered to herself, a habit she picked up from long nights coding in her grandmother's basement. She started by requesting incident reports from private aviation terminals across the country. Her company's reputation opened doors that might have stayed closed for others. Within days, patterns emerged from the data she collected. The numbers were worse than she expected. Minority passengers were 3 times more likely to face additional security checks, 5 times more likely to have their credentials questioned. And most troubling, many simply never came back after their first experience. Sarah didn't just compile numbers, she gathered stories. Her assistant helped her reach out to other executives who had faced similar situations. Some were afraid to speak up. Others had been waiting for someone to finally ask. My first time, they made me wait 2 hours. One CEO wrote back, I missed my meeting and lost $1 million deal. I started driving to meetings instead, another replied. 6 hours in a car feels better than 10 minutes of being treated like a criminal. 2 weeks after the incident, Sarah sat in her Atlanta office, looking at the final report on her screen. It was almost midnight, but she barely noticed the time. The data told a clear story of systemic bias, but she had gone further. She had also created a solution. Her phone rang. It was her grandmother. Baby, I saw that video again on the news, Mrs. Bennett said softly. Are you okay? Sarah smiled, touching the golden pendant she still wore. I'm better than okay, Gran. I think I found a way to fix it. Just like you fixed those old computers in my basement. Bigger than that, Sarah replied. Much bigger. The next morning, Sarah walked into Elite Aviation's corporate headquarters. This time, no one questioned whether she belonged there. The board of directors was waiting for her in their main conference room. Miss Bennett, the CEO greeted her. We want to apologize again for your experience at our terminal. Sarah placed her laptop on the conference table. I'm not here for apologies, she said. I'm here to show you something. For the next hour, she presented her findings. The data showed how discrimination didn't just hurt people, it hurt business. Elite Aviation had lost millions in potential revenue from executives who chose other services after bad experiences. But then she showed them something else, a new security system her team had developed. It used AI to standardize security protocols, tracking every interaction to ensure all passengers were treated equally. The system would flag inconsistent treatment and provide real-time training to security personnel. This isn't just about avoiding bad publicity, Sarah explained. It's about being better. Doing better. The board members looked at each other. They had expected to handle a PR problem. Instead, they were seeing a business opportunity. How soon can you implement this? The CEO asked. Sarah smiled. My team is ready to start tomorrow. As she drove home that evening, Sarah thought about how different this felt from her usual business deals. This wasn't just about making money or growing her company. It was about making real change. Her phone buzzed with a text from one of the board members. Contract approved. Full implementation across all terminals. Sarah pulled over to read the message again. Tears filled her eyes as she thought about all the people who would never have to go through what she experienced. Sometimes, she realized, humiliation could lead to transformation. Her grandmother called again. How did it go, baby? Remember how you always said that God puts obstacles in our path for a reason? Sarah asked. I remember. Well, this obstacle just turned into an open door, and I'm going to make sure it stays open for everyone who comes after me. 2 months after the incident at the airport terminal, Sarah sat in the green room of a major news network. The makeup artist was adding final touches to her face, while the producer explained the interview format. In just 15 minutes, she would share her story with millions of viewers. Remember, the producer said, checking her clipboard, the video of your incident has now reached 50 million views. People want to know what happened next. Sarah nodded, touching her grandmother's pendant for luck. The past 2 months had transformed her life in ways she never expected. SecureFlow had grown from a successful cybersecurity company into something much bigger. 3 minutes to air, someone called out. As Sarah walked onto the set, the bright lights reminded her of that morning sunlight in the terminal. The host, Angela Martinez, greeted her warmly. So, Miss Bennett, Angela began once they were live. What made you decide to record that incident? Sarah leaned forward slightly. I recorded it because I knew my story wasn't unique, but I had the power to do something about it. The interview moved beyond just retelling the incident. Sarah shared how her company had developed the new AI security system, now called FairPass. She explained how it worked in simple terms that everyone could understand. It's like having a fair referee watching every interaction, she said. The system ensures everyone follows the same rules every time. Social media exploded during the interview. Comments poured in from people sharing their own similar experiences. But what caught everyone's attention was Sarah's approach. She wasn't angry or bitter. She was constructive and solution-focused. Back in her office the next day, Sarah's team gathered for their morning meeting. The wall of screens showed news coverage from around the country. But more importantly, they displayed data from the first implementations of FairPass. Reports of discriminatory treatment are down 87% at terminals using our system, her chief analyst reported. And customer satisfaction scores are up 45%. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her grandmother. Just saw you on the morning news replay, baby. You're changing the world, just like you always said you would. Major companies started calling. Hotels wanted the system for their check-in procedures. Retail chains asked about implementing it in their stores. Sarah's inbox filled with partnership requests faster than she could read them. But what touched her most were the letters. Every day, people wrote to share their stories and thank her for speaking up. A young black girl sent a drawing of Sarah with the words, "My hero," written in crayon. We need to do more, Sarah told her team one morning. She stood at the front of the conference room, that same determination in her eyes that had gotten her through years of coding in her grandmother's basement. They launched a new division of SecureFlow called EqualTech. Its mission was simple: use technology to fight discrimination in all customer service interactions. Sarah hired experts in bias training, AI specialists, and people who had experienced discrimination themselves. The press called her a tech revolutionary and the future of fair business. Magazine covers wanted her story. Universities asked her to speak, but Sarah stayed focused on the work. One evening, as she left her office, Sarah saw a familiar face in the lobby. It was the young mother from the terminal, the one who had explained to her daughter what they were watching that day. I hoped I'd meet you again, the woman said. My daughter, she wants to be just like you when she grows up. She's taking coding classes now. Sarah smiled, remembering her own start. Tell her to never stop learning, and never stop standing up for what's right. That night, Sarah visited her grandmother. They sat on the old porch swing, drinking sweet tea like they used to when Sarah was younger. Did you ever think, her grandmother asked, that being blocked from that flight would lead to all this? Sarah looked at the stars appearing in the evening sky. No, she replied honestly. But you always told me that obstacles are just opportunities in disguise. Her phone buzzed with another message. Elite Aviation wanted to feature her in their corporate campaign about inclusion. The video of her incident would be used in training sessions worldwide. The world is changing, Gran, Sarah said softly. And this time, I get to help change it. Her grandmother squeezed her hand. Baby, you're not just helping to change it. You're showing others how to be the change themselves. As the evening breeze carried the scent of grandmother's roses, Sarah thought about all the doors that would stay open because of what happened that morning at the terminal. Sometimes, she realized, success wasn't just about reaching your destination. It was about making the journey better for everyone who followed. 6 months after her television appearance, Sarah sat in her new office on the 30th floor of Atlanta's most modern building. The wall-to-wall windows offered a view of the city she loved, but her attention was focused on the presentation on her laptop screen. Her team was about to launch their most ambitious project yet. Faircheck AI, she said softly, reading the title slide. This new software would change everything. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Maria, her head of development, entered with a tablet in hand. The test results are in, she said, her eyes bright with excitement. You need to see this. Sarah had spent the last 3 months developing an AI system that could detect bias in real time during any customer interaction. It wasn't just about security checkpoints anymore. This system could work anywhere: stores, hotels, restaurants, even online customer service. Show me, Sarah said, clearing space on her desk. Maria pulled up the data. During their test run at a major hotel chain, the system had caught and prevented over 200 potential bias incidents in just 1 week. It flagged problematic language, inconsistent treatment, and even subtle patterns that humans might miss. But here's the best part, Maria continued, swiping to the next screen. Employee behavior started changing once they knew the system was watching. They became more conscious of their actions. Sarah smiled, remembering something her grandmother had told her. Sometimes people just need a mirror to see what they're doing wrong. Her phone buzzed. It was an email from one of the largest retail chains in America. After seeing the hotel test results, they wanted Faircheck AI in all their stores. Similar requests had been coming in daily. We're going to need a bigger team, Sarah told Maria. Much bigger. That afternoon, Sarah visited a local college to speak to computer science students. The lecture hall was packed, with students sitting in the aisles and standing against walls. She noticed many young black women in the audience, their eyes fixed on her with hope and determination. Technology isn't just about making things faster or easier, she told them. It's about making things better. For everyone. She shared how Faircheck AI worked, explaining the complex technology in simple terms. Then she made an announcement that made the room buzz with excitement. Her company was creating 50 new internship positions specifically for students from underrepresented groups. Because sometimes, she said, all people need is a chance to prove themselves. Back at her office, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. It was Mr. Thompson, her old supervisor from the bank where she'd started her career. He looked older now, his beard completely white. I saw what you've been doing, he said, settling into a chair across from her desk. It's bigger than anything I could have imagined when you first showed me that security solution years ago. Sarah smiled, remembering those early days. Would you like to see what we're working on now? She showed him Faircheck AI in action. The system could process thousands of interactions simultaneously, learning and adapting in real time. It could spot patterns of bias that might take humans years to notice. We're not just fixing individual incidents anymore, she explained. We're preventing them from happening in the first place. That evening, Sarah visited her grandmother, bringing dinner from their favorite restaurant. They sat in the old basement where it all began, now cleaned up and turned into a small museum of Sarah's journey. Look at this, her grandmother said, pointing to Sarah's old computer. From this little machine to changing the whole world. Sarah's phone buzzed again. Another major company wanted to implement Faircheck AI. But this request was different. It was from Elite Aviation, the same company where she'd faced discrimination. They wanted to be the first aviation company to use the new system across their entire network. You know what's funny, Gran? Sarah said, looking at the old computer. That guard who stopped me that day, he actually helped create all of this. His bias led to something that will stop thousands of people from facing the same treatment. Her grandmother nodded wisely. That's how change works, baby. Sometimes the biggest doors open when someone tries to shut you out. As the evening grew late, Sarah reviewed the launch plans for Faircheck AI. Tomorrow, they would announce it to the world. But tonight, in her grandmother's basement, she felt like that young girl again, dreaming of making a difference. The computer that had started it all sat quietly in the corner, a reminder that every great change begins with a single person willing to solve a problem. 1 year had passed since the incident at the private aviation terminal. Sarah sat in her company's main conference room, surrounded by screens displaying the latest statistics. In just 12 months, her company's value had grown from $50 million to $150 million. But the numbers that really mattered to her were on a different screen. Discriminatory incidents down by 94% across all our client locations, reported James, her new chief impact officer. Over 10,000 potential bias situations prevented last month alone. The room was packed with her expanded team. What had started with 30 employees now employed over 200 people. Sarah looked around at the diverse faces, remembering how she used to work alone in her grandmother's basement. "Show me the aviation numbers," Sarah requested, leaning forward in her chair. Elite Aviation, the company where her story began, had become their biggest success story. After implementing FairCheck AI throughout their network, they had transformed their entire culture. Their terminals now had the highest customer satisfaction ratings in the industry. "And what about Maxwell?" Sarah asked quietly. Everyone knew who she meant. Richard Maxwell, the guard who had tried to block her that day, had been more than just fired. His story had become a teaching moment. "He's actually requested to meet with you," James said, checking his tablet. "He's been going through our training program." After losing his job, Maxwell had experienced his own transformation. Instead of becoming bitter, he had enrolled in bias awareness courses. Now he wanted to help train other security personnel about the impact of their actions. Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from her grandmother. "Time for your speech, baby. Make them listen." She was due at Elite Aviation's annual conference in 30 minutes. They had made her the keynote speaker, but she had a surprise for them. Standing up, she straightened her blazer and touched her grandmother's pendant. "Let's change some more lives today," she said to her team. At the conference center, the room was filled with aviation executives from around the world. Sarah took the stage to thunderous applause. The same terminal where she had once been humiliated was now visible through the window behind her. "1 year ago, I stood in that terminal," she began, pointing to the window. "1 year ago, someone decided I didn't belong here." The room grew silent. "Today, I'm not here to talk about that moment. I'm here to talk about what we did with that moment." She revealed how FairCheck AI had prevented over 100,000 bias incidents across different industries. But then she shared something new. Elite Aviation was launching a scholarship program for minority students interested in aviation careers. And the first recipient, Sarah announced, is the daughter of a security guard who learned that change is always possible. Maxwell's daughter, a brilliant 18-year-old who dreamed of becoming a pilot, stood up in the audience. The applause was deafening. After the speech, Sarah met with Maxwell himself. He looked different, humbler, older somehow. "I'm sorry," he said simply, "and thank you for helping my daughter." Sarah nodded. Sometimes our worst moments can lead to our best changes. That evening, Sarah called an emergency board meeting. As her team gathered, she unveiled her biggest plan yet. "We're going to make FairCheck AI available for free to small businesses," she announced. "Not everyone can afford our system, but everyone deserves to be treated fairly." The board members looked concerned about the cost, but Sarah was firm. "My grandmother always said that real success isn't just about making money, it's about making a difference." The vote was unanimous. By the end of the month, thousands of small businesses would have access to the same technology used by major corporations. Later that night, Sarah visited her grandmother. They sat on the porch swing, drinking sweet tea and looking at the stars. "Remember when you thought that guard had ruined your big day?" her grandmother asked. Sarah smiled. "Instead, he helped us change thousands of lives." Her phone buzzed with another message. A major civil rights organization wanted to honor her with their annual award, but Sarah was already thinking about her next project. "You know, Bran," she said, "we're just getting started." Her grandmother squeezed her hand. "That's my girl, always looking forward." As the evening breeze carried the scent of night-blooming jasmine, Sarah thought about all the lives that had changed because of one difficult morning. Sometimes she realized success wasn't just about proving people wrong. It was about helping them become better. 5 years had passed since that life-changing morning at the private aviation terminal. Sarah Bennett stood at the window of her office on the 50th floor of her company's new headquarters in downtown Atlanta. The building, a gleaming tower of glass and steel, had been nicknamed the Fairness Tower by locals. At 42, Sarah had become more than just a successful businesswoman. Time magazine had named her Person of the Year for using technology to fight discrimination. But today was special for a different reason. Miss Bennett, her assistant, called through the intercom. "They're ready for you downstairs." Sarah touched her grandmother's pendant, now worn smooth from years of nervous habits. Today, they were opening the Rose Bennett Institute for Equal Technology, named after her grandmother who had passed away last year. The lobby was packed with people. Young students, business leaders, and media crews all waited for her arrival. As Sarah stepped off the elevator, she saw a familiar face in the crowd, the little girl who had watched her stand up to Maxwell 5 years ago. Now a teenager, she was one of the Institute's first students. "Before we cut this ribbon," Sarah began her speech, "I want to tell you about 2 rooms." She described her grandmother's basement where her journey began and the aviation terminal where everything changed. The crowd listened silently. "Today, we're opening a 3rd room," she continued, "one that will change many more lives." The Institute would provide free technology training to 5,000 students each year, but it wasn't just about coding. Every student would learn how to use technology to fight discrimination and create a fairer world. After cutting the ribbon, Sarah led tours through the facility. The walls displayed images of important moments: the viral video of her terminal incident, the launch of FarCheck AI, headlines about lives changed. But the most powerful display was the wall of stories. Thousands of letters covered the wall, each from someone who had been helped by Sarah's technology. One stood out: a handwritten note from Richard Maxwell, the guard who had tried to stop her that day. "Your response to my bias didn't just change my life," he had written. "It changed my children's lives, and through them, it will change the future." Maxwell's daughter had graduated from flight school last month, becoming one of the youngest black female pilots in commercial aviation. His son was now studying computer science at MIT. In the Institute's main hall, Sarah unveiled one final surprise. "Today, we're launching the Open Door Initiative," she announced. "By 2030, we will make bias detection technology available to every business in America, free of charge." The crowd erupted in applause, but Sarah wasn't finished. "And we're starting right here in Atlanta, with small businesses owned by people who know what it feels like to be judged unfairly." That evening, after the crowds had gone home, Sarah walked through the quiet halls of the Institute. She stopped at a special display case near the entrance. Inside was her grandmother's old kitchen table, the same one where she had done her homework, dreamed her dreams, and planned her future. Her phone buzzed with messages from around the world. Leaders wanting to implement her technology, students asking for advice, companies seeking partnerships, but one message made her pause. It was from Elite Aviation CEO. "The terminal where it all began has been renamed. Welcome to the Sarah Bennett Terminal for Equal Access." Sarah smiled, remembering that morning 5 years ago. She had walked into that terminal as a successful businesswoman and walked out as someone who would change the world. A security guard approached her, one of the Institute's new employees. She was young, black, and wore her uniform with pride. "Miss Bennett," the guard said, "thank you for opening doors for people like me." Sarah reached out and squeezed the young woman's hand. "Just remember to keep them open for those who come after you." Later that night, Sarah visited her grandmother's grave. She placed fresh roses beside the headstone and sat on the small bench nearby. "We did it, Gran," she said softly. "We turned that moment of humiliation into a movement of hope." The evening breeze rustled the roses, carrying the sweet scent that reminded her of porch swings and summer nights. Sarah looked up at the stars, thinking about all the doors that would never close unfairly again, all the lives that would be different because of one woman who refused to step aside. Her grandmother had always said that success wasn't about where you end up, but about how many people you bring with you on the journey. Looking at the lights of her institute glowing in the distance, Sarah knew she had kept that promise. The security guard who tried to block her path had unknowingly opened a door that would never close again, and through that door walked thousands of others, each carrying their own dreams of unmatched success.